we? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. We are in Zoom video conferencing. Mr. Howell?
Kate Bricks,
Here.
Jenny Butler.
She's
I know
sitting
Jenny's here.
I have a different device. I am here.
Okay. Jenny Cummings,
here.
Marge Gavoni,
Here.
Pete Hensler,
Here.
Anna Keeney,
Here.
Kate Levier,
Here.
Scott McLean,
Here.
Christina Small,
Here.
and Molly Cochran.
Here.
It's now time for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I know we have a guest pledger. Mr. Karen, could you introduce our guest?
Sure thing. I'm happy to introduce Chloe Allen. Give us a wave, Chloe. On top of taking 5 AP courses and 2 honors courses currently at Wyndham High School, Chloe finds time to share the morning announcements and the Pledge of Allegiance with us on Cohort A days. And she has agreed to jump on and share the Pledge of Allegiance with us tonight.
Okay, thank you. And a reminder to everyone, you will mute yourselves, and Chloe will be the only one speaking.
Hi, everyone. Hi. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. That was terrific. We really appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
Ms. Cummings, we don't have any adjustments to the agenda tonight.
That's great. It's now time for public input, which is an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Is anyone who's raising their hand? I can't see them. Okay. So we'll move on to Wyndham High School updates. Mr. Karen.
So thank you for having me tonight. I'm going to take a few minutes to share a little bit about our opening at Wyndham High School. I hope you can see me and hear me all right. I'm in my little home office with the mood lighting. There's really no way for me to get it. It's either too bright or too light, but this is what I've got here at home. So first I'll start talking, I think we had a very successful open at Wyndham High School, talking about the hybrid to start. I think that a big part of our successful opening was the safety procedures that we put into place. We were able to get a lot of personal protective devices that we shared with staff members. We have made all of the hallways one directional, and we have locked up all of the lockers. So everything we're trying to do is to try to limit congregation. So sometimes people think, well, we do the one-way hallway so people aren't walking in the same direction. It's really not about that incidental contact. It's everybody's moving in the same direction. We're not stopping at lockers so that we're not congregating at any time. We know that a long amount of time where students are together for a longer amount of times is when things can pass. So we have 50 6-foot tables that were purchased and we put in the cafeteria area with seating on either end. And then we have 2 seats at each of the 6-person tables in the cafeteria. So when students go to lunch, they are sitting 2 people at a table. They're socially distanced. That's the time. Breakfast and lunch are the only times besides breaks that students aren't wearing masks within the building. We changed our schedule. I think that has been key in our successful hybrid experience, where we are, instead of trying to do 8 classes at a time like we did well, like we traditionally, in our traditional schedule, we run 6 out of 8 in a given day. And then, and then with a rotation. So what we've done, and then when we were on remote in the spring, we ran all 8 classes. So what we've done now to open is we're only running 4 classes at a time. So teachers are teaching 3 out of 4 instead of 5 or 6 out of 8. Students are taking 3 or 4 classes at a time. It provides a greater opportunity for communication. It allows for each of the cohorts to meet with each teacher twice in person in each week. Some of our area schools around us did not make this change, so their hybrid groups are only meeting with their teachers each individual teacher once a week instead of twice a week. So we believe that the additional contact with the teachers has been very beneficial. I've been pushing for additional connections with kids. I'm very excited that we're going to be doing both cohorts remotely on Fridays, just to give our hybrid students one more opportunity to connect with their teachers within the week. Our schedule also, we're starting the day with an advisory period where students are getting breakfast at remote stations, and very thankful that food services were able to do that for us. So they come into the building, they grab some breakfast, they go into their advisory. Based on cohorts, most of the advisory groups are between 5 and 8 kids in the room at a time. So they have breakfast in their advisor room. After the first month of school, we started using advisory for Pride Time. So teachers can tag students to pull from advisory to go and get individual help, like we would typically do in our Pride block in the middle of the day, but we're able to do that in the morning now. That's been successful. And then we rotate through the day. So I think the schedule has helped, and it's a simpler schedule. There's less classes for students to focus on at a time. And the big difference, I think, is the number of, instead of a teacher working with between 80 and 120 students at a time, that number is cut in half. So it creates an opportunity for more communication and more one-on-one check-ins during the Friday office hours or after school. Another reason we were successful in the open was the great support that we've got from central office and the help we've gotten there. Through the CARES funds, we were able to add 2 long-term subs that are in the building every day to cover if we have a teacher who has to be out. We have a couple of teachers that are working remotely, and so the subs work in their rooms managing student behaviors and expectations while the teachers Zoom in, and that wouldn't have been able to happen unless we had the support of adding those members. We're also using some of our support staff that other schools don't have. So when I talk to school principals around and they say, how is it possible that you are staying open? Some of the schools that have closed, they're not closing because of cases, they're closing because of inability to staff. So we've got the positions that you all have supported for years, the RLP position, the in-school position, and we're able to use those staff members to cover classes and do things in different ways. And that's allowed us to continue to provide instruction every day so far, knock on wood. And then the biggest reason that we've been so successful is the flexibility of our staff and our students. I think it's been amazing to me how flexible they've been, how positive they've been in a situation that is so foreign to all of us. Students kind of have just picked up and they're making the best of a bad situation. They're positive. I miss seeing their faces, but it's a testament to our kids and to our community, how resilient they are. And the teachers the same way. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anxiety, but our people are showing up every day and giving it their all. And I can't thank them enough for what we're doing. My other school, my second school, is the remote school. I'm kind of running that out of the high school because of the complexities with the multiple different classes. Our remote learning experience, I think, is superior to almost any that I've seen or I've talked to other principals. So most schools are doing something with remote and a little bit of support. We have Wyndham High School teachers in all the core subjects, as well as health, physical education, and art offering, and French and Spanish, working remotely with our 100% remote students. We don't have a science teacher. We were unable to provide a science teacher remotely due to not wanting to reduce labs. So I thought I weighed the cost benefits, and we needed to have lab sciences available to our students on their transcripts. So we were unable to provide a science teacher to the 100% remote students. So they received their science instruction through a program called OdysseyWare, but we do have a science teacher that is, her duty is to provide content support for the students that are taking science in OdysseyWare. So those students, we started with about 100. After the first 2 weeks of school, 12 students, I think based on word of mouth on how well we did with the safety procedures and things, came back. So we dropped down under 90 in remote. And then there's been a slow tick up over the last 3 weeks in particular, where we're now at 126, 27 kids in the full remote. Those students meet with their teachers every day, Monday through Thursday, instead of every other day, for a shorter period of time to get through the content. We've had some really great successes, students doing very, very well in the remote platform. Some students that struggled in the in-person actually are doing well in the remote. So I'm happy about how that's going. In a little bit, I'll talk about some challenges, but we're talking about the positives now. The fact that our students have our remote students have daily contact with our teachers is something that a lot of students working remotely throughout the state don't have the option for. So, and I think that the remote teaching group is doing some really neat things to keep the kids connected and try to keep them connected with each other and to the school, even though they're not in the building. A few positive things that we've been able to do given all of everything going on. In October, I submitted the 2-year progress report for NEASC. We are probably 15% beyond what they recommend, where they recommend us to be in addressing the recommendations that they gave us after the visit. So that's good news. We're about 10% behind where I wanted to be, but things happened, so we didn't get to some of the things that I wanted to get to. But we're on really good shape for finishing up all of our recommendations by the 5-year mark. I thank Mr. Howell and the team who worked with the NEASC committee coming in, because their recommendations really lined up with the things that we need to do to get better and to improve what we do for students within the building. So a lot of the work that we did to support the NEASC recommendations has already paid off, and I'll talk about a couple of reasons why in a little bit. We were able to safely have all juniors take the PSAT. Many of our neighbors chose not to. We looked at it and we did some problem solving, and we had the kids take the PSATs in their cohorts in the gymnasium, and Bill turned up the air circulation and we spread them all out. So we had a safe and successful PSAT administration. That's a National Merit Scholarship assessment as well, so our kids didn't lose out on that option. Some schools chose not to offer the PSAT. Some schools are taking our model and they're going to offer the PSAT a little bit later. We also felt that it was very important to offer an SAT for our seniors who missed out on the opportunity to take it last year. So we ran 2 days of SAT testing at the high school as well. And we did that safely and successfully. So that's a testament, again, to the flexibility of our staff, the creativity and planning of our administrative team. Phil and Vanessa did some really neat things to make sure that everybody was safe and all the classes were covered. And I'm thankful for that. Other positives are our student behaviors are excellent. There's less kids in the building. It's easier to manage. I think kids are just happy to be in the building and doing kid things. And some of the silly stuff that we deal with on a typical year, in a typical year, we're not dealing with. So that's a positive, and it's exciting. And we're talking to kids about why that is and how we can try to continue to have that type of environment when everybody's back and we're doing things the normal way. One of the big positives that really plays into the NEASC work is we've been able to really, with the staff, focus in on our targets. We had a situation where last year, any student that was passing for the first semester, or passing not even for the first semester, passing their classes when we closed, but ended up not passing the second semester when we were remotely, we gave those students incompletes, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to improve their grades. And I had big plans about using money that had been set aside for different things to have a really beefed up summer school program, because I had no idea that we would be in this long. So when that couldn't happen, then we said, well, we're going to pay some teachers to work with kids after school. We'll do a 5th block and we'll pay for busing. And then when that couldn't happen, we developed an Eagle Block program, and it's been amazing. So we have teachers that are assigned each period to work directly with students on their Eagle plan. So any student who received an incomplete has a plan on how to recover that credit based on standards. So we said to the English teachers, what were the key standards in English 2 that are covered in the second semester? What are the most important things that they need to know? And they provided, and they were able to dig into that and provide us with those standards and activities because we've been doing that work for NEASC for the last 3 years. So now, instead of students trying to make up individual assignments, they are working with certified teachers in the content area in the Eagle Block. Instead of a study hall, they go to a room where they're assigned to go, and they receive new instruction, new assessment on the core targets that they missed for whatever reason while we were on closure. And it's worked so well that our hope is that we can get to 80 or 90% of those incompletes covered in the first half of the year, and then we're going to roll that into an RTI program, a response to intervention program, so that if we identify that students are struggling this year during the year, we'll pull them from their study halls and we'll assign them to those Eagle Blocks, and they can get additional instruction on the standards. Not so, instead of the old model of here's some help on your homework, this model is here's some additional instruction on the target that you struggled to meet in your classroom. And the hope is that we're going to be able to do that in real time. So I'm excited about that. We have teachers that are excited about that. And then the students who can't fit an Eagle Block into their schedule, they still have an Eagle plan, and where teachers are volunteering, we're assigning Eagle Block advocates to work with those students remotely, so to make sure that they're on pace to recover those credits. So that has been an unintended positive consequence of the work that we did on standards, and as well our situation with incompletes pushed us into finding a way to address the incompletes. And I think we've come across not only a way to address the incompletes, but a way to provide better instruction and real-time remediation for students along the way. So I'm very excited about that moving forward. Some challenges that we're facing so far this year. Staffing, if we experience quarantine, making sure that we have we have staff members to be in place for the students. So that's always a line that we're walking. I'm not sure if Chris shared with anybody. I had back surgery in November, and it needed to happen right off. So I was out of the building the day before the election and the day of our first big quarantine. And we had Chris and Christine were at the high school ready to cover class. It was all hands on deck. And they tell me it went super, super smooth while I was under the knife. But that's the type of thing that we're all the time. We're managing that. Do we have the staff members to cover? Maybe a bigger concern for me is as students go out on quarantine, how do we keep them engaged, and how do we keep them on pace while they're at home, given some of the struggles that we've had with our Wi-Fi connection. If we have too many kids on at the same time, we've made some big strides there, but there's almost because of the model last year, there's almost a feeling of when I'm out, the time is mine, and I'll get caught up later. And I have a concern with the rising number of students that have to spend some time out of the building, hybrid students in particular, how we can make sure that they stay engaged. So we're trying some different things. We're communicating, finding some different ways to work with teachers and families around making sure that when kids are out, they're still engaged, not only engaged in the learning, but they're engaged with their class. That's has been a big eye opener for me, having a 10th grader at home, how important the connection to other kids is, given everything that's going on. So we're working to try to make sure that kids are not only staying connected when they can't be in the building, oftentimes no fault of their own, how we can keep them engaged in the curriculum and keep them engaged in the school atmosphere. So that's one of the things we're working on. In terms of remote, we continue to struggle with a percentage of our remote students that aren't engaging. The attendance is not great, and if the attendance isn't great, it's hard for them to access their learning. I think there's a percentage of kids who felt like when they signed up for remote, they were signing up for the asynchronous plan that we had in the spring, and it's been a struggle to try to get the kids to engage and follow the daily schedule while they're at home. And we do follow pretty much the high school schedule for the remote learners, because I've got 6 teachers that teach in the high school and teach remotely, so I have to stay on the same schedule. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And then the biggest thing, I think probably the thing that you guys are the most concerned about, is coverage of curriculum. So we're spending half the time with our kids, and then a little bit more now, but we still at the high school, we've got a responsibility to get through the curriculum and have kids prepared for the next class and the next level. So a lot of attention to at the high school on, are you using assessments that you used in the past? How are kids performing on assessments that you used in the past? How close are we to where we need to be? And kids who are given pre-quarantine spike, I think we were doing pretty well. I am concerned the more time kids spend out of school, the harder it is for us to keep up with covering the curriculum. And our teachers want to work with kids, so they're not going to plow ahead. They're going to try to meet the kids where they are, and we just only have so much time. So that's kind of, that's my open. That's how Windham High School has opened. I can take any questions about that. And then I've got a couple of classes that we'd like to bring forward next year that I could share with you as well.
I don't see any hands raised, so.
All right. So we are interested in bringing forward 2 new classes for next year. One would be a women's studies class. It would be an elective in English. So this class has come out of, we've offered the gender studies class for a while, and there's been some feedback that students are interested in hearing more about the impact that women have had on society. And it kind of fits into English because they have the elective structure. So it's a social studies sounding class, but with design around analysis of primary sources, it's a reading and writing class, looking at the impact women have had on history, science, healthcare, and the like. It would be an elective class to start. I think it easily covers the English curriculum, the standards within English, but I think we would start it as an elective offering and see what we got for student interest. So my philosophy is we run the classes that the kids want to take. So with your approval, we would put it in the course of study, and if students were interested in it, we would try to run it, and depending on how things went, we could look at making it be an additional. It would start as an opportunity to cover missed targets through elective, but I think it could easily be one of the choice classes that could be used to fulfill the English curriculum. So that's a women's studies class that we'd like to bring forward. The second class is one that we've had on the books for a while, the Life 101, which used to be a social studies class. And my proposal is to move it to the health and wellness department and offer it as an additional opportunity for students to meet the Health 2 requirements. So as you know, we're one of very, very few schools, high schools, that require a full year of health education as a graduation requirement. The Health 2 class is currently offered to juniors and seniors. We would make this an additional opportunity for kids to fulfill that graduation requirement and meet those standards with a slant more on being prepared for life after high school. So how do you manage credit cards? How do you set a budget? How do you change a flat tire? Practical problem solving, those type of things. And it fits nicely with the health standards. So given your okay, we would like to make that an additional option for students to meet that health requirement instead of the traditional Health 2 class, and along with the traditional Health 2 class.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
In the women's studies class, it says the societal advancements through American history. So there would be no component of international or even a comparison of women in America and women in other countries.
So the start would be with in America, but it could go from there. I think that the initial, so I asked for an initial plan that looked at units, and there was kind of a different units on in different subject areas, all looking within the US. But it could easily go in a bunch of different directions.
I've just always concerned that if we only teach about America, we think that all women's experiences are American women's experiences, and they are different throughout the world. So that's just my soapbox about that situation. The other question I have is about the Life 101, and it says students in this course will be exposed to a series of tutorials. Can you tell me what that means?
So that is their mini lessons. So it's a number of mini lessons designed to provide students with answers to real life questions. And when it was a social studies class, it was designed around, the teachers had many more tutorials or lessons than they would need in a half-year class, and it would be based on the kids who come into the class. So you could get a group of kids who all work and they all understand how a checkbook works and they all understand, or you could get a group of students who have never signed a check. And so it's designed around using a bunch of different little mini lessons to provide the instruction that we're looking for.
I guess my question was the use of the word tutorials, because that sounded to me like it was not, that it was videos or.
So the health department didn't like the use of tutorials either. That tutorials is the word that was accepted the first time this course was brought forward,
Okay.
and it comes directly from the course of study. So
Okay.
I have no concern moving tutorials out. They thought this class was accepted by the board years ago using this language, so why would we change that language when we bring it forward? But Ms. Dubois did bring that up as well.
Okay, thanks. That's all that I have. Does anybody else have any questions about it? Don't see anybody. So thank you, Mr. Karen. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's a lot of information. I'm glad it's going well, and the things that you have talked about going well, the Eagle Block and the Eagle Block advocates especially. I'm glad to hear about them. So thank you. Next is athletics, my favorite subject. It really is.
Hey everyone, thank you. Seems as if I was just presenting yesterday to you to talk about fall athletics, how we could do it and do it safe and do it right. And I think we hit it out of the park. We had a few hiccups here and there, but what I thought I'd do tonight, I thought I'd highlight some of the items from the fall. And I hope you don't mind, but I invited a few guest speakers for a short segment to say a few words. And when they're done, I thought I'd transition into kind of what lies ahead with the winter. But first of all, my starting point is I really think that the kids and coaches really need to be acknowledged for the fall experience, because the kids, and I know there's a few watching tonight. Of course, we always think that our kids are among some of the best and everything. And I guess I sold them a little short, because they totally exceeded my expectations over and beyond what I wanted. It's rare to go through a season and not have one discipline issue. It's even more rare to go through a season and not even have to speak to one student athlete. So
Wow.
the kids were over and beyond, met our expectations. The coaches, I can remember when we first started meeting with fall coaches back in May, their eyes were pretty wide as far as the things that we were going to have to do and the protocols and everything. But I tell you, by the time it came around, the coaches were very much, we got this, we can do this. And I think the kids fed off that. And there's quite a few coaches here tonight, and I would just like to give them kudos and thank you all very much. We had this fall, some Wyndham High School teams got to compete. Some got delayed. Some had an abbreviated season that was cut a little bit short. And some were actually postponed to a later part in the year. But we had just a great fall again. We had great community support. We, as you know, we had a huge project that was developed and took place for the outdoor volleyball court for the kids, and which is really going to add to the campus. And we had some community members that went over and beyond, and also we had some district employees. I'd like to really recognize Bill Hansen, who went over and beyond, and Mike D'Ionato to make that possible for the site and the location. But it really goes into the success that we had, not because we won games, but because I feel as if we did it right. We even had a blend of middle school athletics, even though it wasn't what middle school kids were really used to. It was based around skills and drills. And yeah, as we all know, middle school kids, they like to play and run and go, and it looked very different. But they embraced it. We did it, and we did it safely and provided a venue for them to have an outlet. And I know Jack Fitch is on here tonight, who helped me with getting that going and off the ground up to Raymond. And I think our middle school soccer coach, Mr. Beers, is on here tonight, and I'd like to thank them. But we also, to have that, I'll tell you, many schools in our area, just when it came to the middle school component, just kind of put their hands up and said, we'll pass on this and see if we can do something in the winter. But, in meeting with Mr. Crockett and Mr. Patton and kind of pulling this together, they were very open to try to provide something for the kids, and we did. of course, we had some blips on the radar, and we had some internal problems that we had to work through, and we did that. And we'll make adjustments and moving to the winter. But we had some big one of the biggest things, which you all know about and the community knows about. And this fall, I wasn't the most popular person in the town of Wyndham or Raymond, but having fans at games was definitely something that was new and different and not fun. But we got through it, and we will get through it in the winter, because that's in place this winter as well. And some things that we can do better in regards to trying to get live streaming and get that probably down and taken care of a little bit more efficiently to provide opportunities for families to see their kids play. But that was one of the bigger hiccups that we had. Three people that there's a lot of people that I'd like to thank, but I think three people that really that I'd just like to publicly acknowledge before I have the kids say a few words about the fall. But Carrie Jolly and Casey Sinclair, Carrie, our high school nurse, and Casey, our athletic trainer for the high school this fall, and really kind of worked together with myself and Phil Rossetti and on a COVID response team for athletics. And the work that they did was very much instrumental in providing opportunities for kids. And I'd like to thank Mike Kelly. I think sometimes between him and I, we take a beating, let's just say, sometimes. And Mike Kelly, if you look at trying to get athletes during COVID to other communities to play competitions, there are a ton of moving parts. And I tell you what, Mike Kelly, I owe a huge piece of gratitude to, because he really made it happen. And it wasn't, what do you need now? It was, how can I help and how can we make this work? So I'd like to give him a shout out. But I have a few kids, Mr. Howell, if it's okay and appropriate, I don't know. And is it set up where they can just unmute themselves and say a few words?
They should be able to do that, Rich, but if
Oh.
not, if you want to call out names, we can make sure they're unmuted as well.
Okay. Lily, why don't you go first and tell them who you are? And none of this is scripted. I have no idea what they're going to say, so I'm a little nervous, but Lily, why don't you take the floor?
I'm Lily. I'm a senior on the girls varsity soccer team. And this year, sports were definitely different, but it was really good to have like a sense of normalcy in our current situation. It was nice to be able to get with like a group of people that we know and be able to play a sport that we love in like a sense where like nothing's really normal right now. And I found that to be like a really good experience, even if our season was cut short and we didn't have like the full summer experience. But I really enjoyed it, and it was definitely worth all the precautions that we took.
Thank you, Lily. Diane, I think you're out there somewhere.
Hi, I'm a senior on the cross country team, and just getting to be able to see my teammates and be around people was such a great feeling. And it was like a motivator to get through the school days. It was like something to look forward to, and it really encouraged me. And I think that it was really encouraging to a lot of other kids on the team, and just overall a really good experience despite the precautions we had to take. It's still worth it.
Thank you, Diane. And Bria, I know you're here. I saw you, so feel free.
Thank you. I'm a senior, and I'm on the varsity cheerleading team, and I'm a captain. But I am very grateful that we were able to have our season, because I know before fall started for cheering, my team wasn't really expecting that we were going to get to have anything at all, just because of the whole numbers thing. But not only were we actually able to cheer at some games, we were able to get involved with the community more, and read some books and take videos of ourselves to primary students and support all teams, even if we weren't able to be there physically at the games. It definitely had some different aspects, but I know that my teammates, including myself, we were very happy and appreciative of the season we were given.
Thank you, Bria. And our last speaker is Will.
Yes, can you guys hear me? Good. My name is Will Ledbetter. I'm a football player here at Wyndham High School. And first, I would just like to thank the school board, administration, our coaches for allowing us to play fall sports. I know every single fall athlete was grateful that we had the opportunity to play. I would also like to thank Mr. Drummond and our athletic trainer, Casey Sinclair, for putting in great protocols to make our seasons as safe as possible. I know our attitudes as football players were to remain as safe as possible and to give ourselves the best chance to really extend our season. And I think some reasons for our success, at least on the football team I can speak of, is that we were sanitizing in and out of practice, going to 7-on-7 games. We would space out on the bus. Definitely compared to other teams we played against, we were the best with mask wearing. And so I really thank everyone involved for allowing us to play. And I think the kids and coaches did a great job with this whole new COVID twist. I mean, this is crazy. I know football was a huge deterrent when talking about fall sports. So it was really nice to see, community pull and to come together to have a fall sports season. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Will and Lily and Diane and Bria. I appreciate you guys coming tonight and everything. And what I'd like to do is just jump into the winter real quick and just give a little overview, and then I can wrap it up. But we're looking to hopefully start skills and drills next week, where it's really based around conditioning and getting the kids reacclimated. A lot of our, if not all of our protocols are in place for the winter that we had in place for the fall. And from next week's skills and drills, it would really dovetail into hopefully an actual season on December 14th with tryouts. Middle school right now is, let's just label it as a little bit delayed. The biggest reason is I want to get together with the two middle school principals, which we're doing tomorrow, to kind of talk about a plan and a course of action and something that we can provide for the kids safely. And if it's skills and drills, we'll take it and do it. And if it's something to where we can provide competition outside the school walls, then we'll take it and be grateful for that as well. But of course, as anything and moving forward, safety is our top priority. But at the high school level, again, skills and drills next week, and hopefully tryouts the week of the 14th, and competitions as far as games really wouldn't happen until after the holidays. And the state really feels that's important piece in trying to, bring a resemblance of a game back into the picture for winter athletes. There are some huge challenges and obstacles we face in the wintertime. Luckily our hockey team, they can't skate out of USM because USM is closed for the foreseeable future as far as their facilities. But we did lock in ice at Bridgeton Ice Arena back in July. So that is a huge savior where hockey players will be able to hit the ice next week with skills and drills. Unfortunately, right now, our swim team, they don't have any water right now. And it's somewhat of a commodity, not just locally here, but really throughout the state. There's a lot of teams in that situation as well. Our team, as everybody knows, and if you don't know, we swim out of St. Joseph's College. And again, it's very similar to St. Joe's, or USM, where the facilities are somewhat not available for the foreseeable future. But some recent discussions with St. Joe's is that they're re-examining that. And I submitted a request into St. Joe's, hopefully that can be granted, that they feel comfortable with, to where we could get our kids in the pool. And that's coming, and hopefully we'll get some good news. Indoor track right now, of course, again, reverting back to USM, it makes it really difficult when you don't have a facility that can accommodate indoor track. But our boys team and our girls team will be working out in our gyms and working on conditioning and workouts that to get them involved and get them reacclimated. And those are some things that those kids will be doing. And the coaches will be meeting with the kids this week, and we've met with the coaches to go over protocols and everything. So we feel that we're hopefully going to be in a good place come next week. Some other challenges, and I just want to reference again, busing is going to continue to be an issue, trying to get kids to events when and if we can return to play as far as competitions. But as I referenced in the beginning, Mike Kelly was great to deal with this fall. And hopefully that can continue as far as trying to make these accommodations to get some competitions going. There is a sport that is delayed right now for the wintertime, and that's wrestling, due to the high contact, close proximity, and where it's rated as being a high risk sport. It's delayed till the end of February, but in speaking with the wrestling coaches, we feel as if after the holidays, we could bring them in and give them a gym time to where we could do conditioning with them, not wrestling, but conditioning, to get them back in the gym and acclimated. And that would give them plenty of time prior to the season. And just for people who are here, volleyball is going to be played and put back into kind of the end of the winter, beginning spring season. It still has, some work to be done as far as where it's going to go. It's probably going to go at the end of February and go to mid to late March. But our volleyball players will have a chance to compete, which is great. Again, I referenced this in closing. Our next steps this week, I know our athletic trainer was on here not too long ago, and she's probably in and out of the meeting because we have Zoom meetings with athletes tonight. But we're meeting with our athletes tonight by sport and our coaches, and we're going over certain protocols and expectations that we need them in place for next week. And I think this is a good sign. Last year, we had approximately 215 winter athletes, and signups as of today, we're at 190. So our numbers are close to what we had last winter. And I feel confident if we're given the opportunity, and if our color designation on Friday allows us to continue with athletics, I feel as if, and I hope that we can do it and provide a safe environment for these kids, and a venue where they can, kind of do some things that they do well over and beyond the academic setting. So I can take any questions that you have and try to answer them the best I can. Trust me, if I don't have the answer, I'll find it and I'll get back to you for sure.
Rich, could you just briefly touch on skiing before you?
Yep. Skiing is, it's tough to say that there's some question marks about skiing when we live in the state of Maine, but the question marks that really are around skiing right now are around the lodge. And, we're hoping to get some guidance we use Shawnee Peak, and we're hoping to get some guidance from the mountain real soon as far as their expectations when we have kids going to the mountain, as far as what their protocols will be, blending that with the expectations of the return to play for alpine ski through the state. And I think we can do it. That's the one activity that it's outdoors. And I think it's set up great for obviously for our climate and everything. We need some snow, obviously, and I think we'll get some help with that. But the one thing, like I said, we're waiting on is just a little bit of more input from the mountain as far as what they are expecting from the ski schools.
Molly?
I'm just curious, you didn't mention basketball and the unified team. Will that be happening this year?
Great question, Molly. Unified hopefully will be happening. The state, as far as the Maine Principals Association and the other agencies that have worked hard, have put together guidelines for unified basketball to take place this winter. It's going to be maybe a little bit later than it usually is. Instead of mid-January, it might be more of a late January start. But also one big thing that I want to do, Molly, is to meet with the coaches that coach those youngsters and those kids and everything, to kind of get the feel as far as where they're at and go over the guidelines with them. But you bet, if that's something that we can do and we get the green light and we feel as if we can do it safely, we would definitely do that for sure.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites.
Okay, I have a question about the ice hockey. When would you be doing that? What times would you be doing that? Because that seems like far to go.
Yeah, they have actually a great ice time. They skate at 4:45 in the afternoon, and they'd be off the ice by 5:45. In years past, we've been at USM, where predominantly we've had morning ice times, and the kids they're pretty happy about not having that 5:30 ice.
And will you be having games?
Right now, Jenny, the plan is if they have games, it would fall probably on or after January 11th. And we're currently working on a schedule, and a little bit about the schedules. They would be very similar to the fall, to where we would look and use geographic regions and try to match up with pods to have close proximity with neighboring towns to have games. Yep.
Anna?
I don't really have a question for you, Mr. Drummond. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank your coaches and athletes. I know I was skeptical at best going into the school year and the fall sports season. I was coming off from a personal level watching my daughter end her senior year when COVID hit, when the pandemic hit, and miss out on a lot of things. And how could we do that all safely to make sure all of these athletes got to have a graduation and have a prom and have their senior nights. And not only did your coaches and athletes make it happen, you far exceeded everybody's. And I'm not talking about awards and accolades. I mean, just the level that they carried themselves with was so impressive, and I'm so thankful.
Thank you. And what you just said is really going to be some talking points that I'm going to have when I make my way into the winter, conditioning workouts next week. The bar is pretty high for the winter athletes. I just can't say enough, and I greatly thank you for your comments. The coaches and the kids they were wonderful. Thank you.
Pete, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. And Rich, I just want to echo Anna's sentiments and also just, make sure that we're thanking you, because, I mean, it's under your leadership that all this stuff is happening. So definitely appreciate that. I do have a question in terms of for my benefit and for the public's benefit, I'm just trying to reconcile because as the parent of a volleyball player, when we were in the fall season, we were told that volleyball couldn't happen because it was an indoor sport. And now as we move into winter, all of these sports that we're talking about are, or the majority of them are indoor sports. And this is happening as we're seeing a rise in cases of COVID. So I know it's not a decision that is made on your end. Your decisions are guided by what the state is telling us. But do you know what changed between the fall and the winter as to why indoor sports weren't allowed in the fall and now they're being allowed? Is it because of the success that we've had in the fall?
I think that's a piece of it, Pete, and that's a great question and comment. It's something that I've spoken to several people about and spoken to the volleyball coach and everybody. In hindsight, volleyball should have happened this fall. And I think it could have happened before the spike and then the increase, but for many reasons, the state agencies and the MPA decided to put it off. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there was some really good success with fall activities, and moving into winter, I think it's predominantly everything is inside. I think it was just a feeling of, if we're going to do this, let's give this a shot based on the fall success. And then there's a big, X amount of weeks ago, we didn't let these kids participate. Not a great answer, not a great response, but in hindsight, volleyball should have been able to go this fall. And I think just having gone through it now for the first time, I think if it was on the table now and I think it'd be a little bit different, but I am glad that they are getting inside and going to be able to have a season, but it's not going to be the traditional setting that they were accustomed to by any means.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Danny, I just have a quick comment where I just want to echo Pete and Anna for, first of all, with Rich and our coaches, and honestly, students, I love having you here tonight. It's great hearing student voices on fall athletics and what it's meant to you. I mean, that has been, I think, the highlight of board meetings for me thus this fall is hearing all of you talk about that. With all of this being said, just some other things just to underscore is that first of all, winter will be a little different than fall, where masks will be required at all times. So unlike the fall where masks could be taken off during vigorous activity, masks are on at all times for all student athletes when they're participating. Second to that, and we've seen this with York County throughout the fall, Cumberland County is currently green, but if the CDC moves that metric for counties, that Cumberland County becomes yellow, then everything goes to pause and does not resume again until things go green. So it's another reason why we need to keep doing the hard work of mask wearing and sanitizing and following safety protocols so that we can give our wonderful student athletes a winter season. But in the event that things go yellow, yellow means red for athletics. And so York County will not be starting next week. They're still in that yellow phase, as are other districts around the state. So I know there's a tremendous amount of work put in to get this fall season going. This could be a season of starts and stops, and we're hoping that it's not the case. But again, just want to make sure everyone knows all the rules before we start.
Thank you. Thanks, Rich, and thanks for the coaches for being here, especially Mr. Beers and Mr. Fitch, of course. And thank you for the student athletes who have added so much. We really appreciate your coming. We'll now move on to Mrs. Hessler, who's going to talk about the district achievement report.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me back again. Tonight, we're going to take a look at the annual achievement report, which we do every year. It is a little bit different, and so I'm going to walk through some of the pieces. And like Mr. Drummond has special guests tonight, I have some special guests here as well that will be able to engage in our conversation. So, Mr. Howell, if it's okay with you, can I share my screen?
It is, you're already co-host.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the annual achievement report is being presented tonight to our school board in our community. And the goal of this report, for those that are new, is to share an update with the school board community in regards to our demographics, student learning, and our building goals. The report can be found on the RSU 14 website, rsu14.org. Under departments, there is curriculum and assessment, and there is an annual achievement report. This also houses every report we've done, I believe, for the past 13 years. This report will be there as of tonight, and also the slides that I'm sharing with you. So if you ever want to go back and take a look at it, it is available. The full report this year looks a little bit different due to some lack of data points due to closure and COVID. But we will touch upon the mission and vision, our demographics, the resources, including our budget, and then most importantly, our student learning indicators. So our mission and vision, which is in works, as you saw in the report, and just to remind the community that the mission of the Wyndham Raymond School District is to ensure success for all learners. Our vision is listed here. I love this picture on this slide, and I'll share a little bit about it. We've talked an awful lot about what school has looked like, what happened in spring and now in the fall, and this picture really just summarizes one school's creativity to share a message with students. And that's what this vision and this is what we are about. We are in the middle of a new strategic plan we are creating, and we're hoping to have that come to the community later in spring of 2021. So more to come on our vision. So a little bit of a quick review of the COVID impact, the changes in RSU 14. From March to June last year, we went 100% remote learning, K through 12. We quickly enacted a closure website. Our school nutrition staff revamped everything and worked to feed our families. We had a book bus for elementary students. And most impressively for me and my role is I logged over 450 hours of online professional development from our staff. And that included only the staff that needed the contact hours. So I can't even imagine the number of hours outside of that our staff engaged in. They did an amazing job touching base with anything that the Department of Education had to open with, to share ideas, connecting with colleagues across the state, and changing the way they looked at education due to this incredibly hard part that we are in life right now. And then at the end of all this, you learn through the curriculum committee that we took staff feedback, and our big lens was, how do we make this better? What happens if we're like this in the fall? We didn't know, and yet we took all that information and we planned thoughtfully to what we have today. And so this school year, RSU 14, and I say this very proudly, has provided choices for our families. We have the hybrid model where students attend 2 in-person days and 2 days working at home. And starting this Friday, there's another academic component. We also were able to offer families 100% distance learning. These classes are taught remotely using technology, and they're taught by the RSU 14 staff. And I have to say, word must have gotten out because I'm getting a lot of calls on how are you guys doing that? I heard it's going pretty well, and it doesn't meet the needs for everyone, but I'm really proud that we're able to offer this opportunity for our families, and especially to stay connected with our schools and our staff during this time. We also offer at the quarters changes. Families can make a change of placement, whether to come to remote or if you're a remote student going back into the hybrid model. And so it's always a work in progress, moving kids. Rich Drummond mentioned earlier, working with the famous Mike Kelly. If students are returning, Can we fit them on a bus? How do we make this work so that we can meet the needs of our families? And so our demographics here are listed, and some of the pieces have changed a little. Currently, right now, we have, I gotta move my thing, I apologize. This always catches me. We're educating over 3,144 students in the RSU. And as of last week, I think when I put this report, the final together, we have 449 students accessing our remote learning. Our graduation rate, which is the 4-year cohort, is at 89.9%. And our other pieces over here are student population, male and female. This demographic slide, we used to do this manually to find this out. I'm happy that the department now asks for all this information and it actually puts it together for us. I'm especially proud of looking at our teachers' degrees. How many of our teachers over the state average have earned their master's degree? And we are really working hard on supporting any staff member that wishes to grow in this world and grow in our parts. Oops, I don't know why I can't get that. Here we go. So our next chart that we always look at is our economically disadvantaged. These are our numbers that we're reporting, and we're down about 2% in 2018. I do want to point out to the board, working with Jeannie, our numbers of October 2020 are not yet out. And when we do have those numbers, we will be putting them into a slide for you so that you have that information. As you can imagine, collecting this information is a little bit difficult this year. And as you know, the nutrition department in RSU 14 has just been stellar with all the information that all the food that they are delivering to families. And if you don't follow our school nutrition site on Facebook, if you like social media, you're really missing out on the daily meals and the offerings and connecting kids and food together. One of the pieces we are seeing a little bit down is the number of families filling out their applications, especially if they're a remote family. As all of you know, that school meals are free for any child under the age of 18. And many, many people are taking advantage of that, which is exactly what we want them to be doing. But filling out that paper may seem like, well, why do I need to do that if everybody's getting it? As you know, as a board, when I speak to you about our federal funding for title grants, our subsidy for title comes from the amounts that we have in our free and reduced lunch. So I know Jeannie and her staff are working on another push so that we can get those numbers in and so that we can make the most out of the funding that we can receive. And I'm going to touch very quickly on our students who are receiving special education services. As of 2 weeks ago, Lisa also presented when I did and shared a very deep dive into special education during this time. I also want to make sure this is a historical report we do each year, and we always want to make sure that we're capturing the same information so that we can share. So you can see that we are only a percent off from last year of identified students at 16% this year. And then I also provided you a breakdown. Currently right now, as of the last time Lisa presented, we have 517 students who are receiving special education services. Our enrollment trends to touch upon, I did make an adjustment from the slides that I shared with the board. In our live reports that the brilliant Mike Pelletier prepares for us on enrollments, we have a live enrollment database. It was K to 12 and not pre-K. So I needed to adjust Raymond Elementary School to make sure all of our newest members of RSU 14 are counted for. And I think Mrs. Peavy would be a little bit upset if we didn't include those 32 4-year-olds we have up there. And so these bar graphs really reflect our numbers of where we are. And so in our youngest learners, our numbers are up a little bit in our enrollment. Then we move on to Manchester School, which is down, which doesn't surprise us. As you remember, a few years ago, we had that big bubble class coming into 4th and 5th, and they're now over at Mr. Patton's school. So the Manchester numbers are a little bit down, and Jordan Small Middle School is holding steady from last year to this year. Moving over to the middle schools and the high schools, you can see our enrollment is up a little bit at the high school, and we're up a little bit at Wyndham Middle School, about 24 students based on our population right now. So these are the parts that we also like to look for trends. We also look at staffing. Of course, this year, it's so incredibly different due to our 449 remote kids who are here, but they're not physically in our buildings in our hybrid schedule. So the next piece that we always attend to are the resources and our budget trends. And Stacy Webster, who does the brilliant work for all of us starting in December when we create budgets, really has helped me understand the budget so much better. And we also share this comparison table as a quick reference. I know that once we get started in budget, we're really down into the weeds, which we need to be, but this kind of gives us a global view of from year to year and a 4-year trend of where our budget is in each of the different categories. And then our percentage of our total budget. So half of our budget, of course, is in instruction and student support. Our special education instruction has gone up from year to year. We're now at 17.99%. Our school administration, facilities, and then debt. So these are the pieces that we can look over trends in time to see where we are and where the need is. And so as we craft this year's budget, we will be looking at this table plus assessing the needs of what we have right now. So another part we always look at is our cost per pupil. And I have to point out on this slide, if you're looking at home, those are our pre-Kers up at Mrs. Peavy's building in their rain suits and boots that we have for them because they're going outside and exploring the outside and doing their activities out there, and wanted you to get a glimpse of those little guys tonight. But these are what you're looking at here, which I know Mr. Howell will also bring up during his budget presentation, are the per pupil operating costs for each district, and looking around at the other districts and the state average. So we can see that right now we are above the state average per pupil cost when it comes to educating our students. And so now we get into this part, which I have to say was really stumping me when we're looking at data. This is the part I usually dive into the main state assessment that we take each year. And unfortunately, due to our school closures, the MEA testing was not administered. This included the mathematics and reading we take for grades 3 to 8, the SAT for third-year high school students, and the MEA for science, which is for grades 5, 8, and 11. None of those took place last spring. And so now we're into a new phase where the state has currently proposed the elimination of the measured progress and its testing partner for the MEA. So currently it is unclear which testing platform will be used to assess Maine students in the spring of 2021. It has also, though, announced that it will not continue the SAT for the third-year high school students. And so this slide really is a snapshot in time of the information we have currently and will need to be updated as we learn more information from the Department of Education of what spring testing will look like, what platform will it be, and what are the opportunities for us to have kids take the SAT if they would like to do that piece. But it will be a very different spring for us. And again, we are on pause until we know what that will look like. So another part that we added in here, teachers and administrators around our district have really worked hard on a multi-tiered system of support. This work is being spearheaded by many of our administrators, including Mrs. Peavy, Mrs. Danini, Christine Frost-Burtonay, Vanessa Mushut at the high school. How do we, and what system of support do we need to put in? And I put in this graphic because I think it's really important for us to have a really nice understanding of what we mean by support for kids. And so this graph really shows you, we've added at the bottom, which is called a foundation, that we believe that all learners are going to receive a high quality differentiated instruction through integrated, viable curriculum that makes academic, social, and emotional proficiency accessible. We start there. And then we go to tier 1. And I'm pointing out these tiers because when we get to our data that we do have, the tiers are going to be shaped in a way that hopefully can help us look at our data as very streamlined. So our tier 1 support is really meaning that learners are not meeting the grade level academic or behavioral standards, and they receive targeted support that's delivered by the classroom teacher. So tier 1 support is my own teacher helping to support me because I'm not where I am yet. Our next level is a tier 2 support, and that's where students receive very targeted, monitored, and specific support. And this support is carried out, again, by their teachers, some support staff, specialists, school counselors, or social workers. And then their tier 3 support, again, are students who have not yet demonstrated sufficient progress from all the strategies that we've tried in the first 2 tiers, and they have been found to be eligible for our special education services as they need a little bit more of an intensive level of support. And so as you're looking at this triangle, the arrows are sharing with you that the higher we go up in the tiers, the more increasing intensity of support. And it also means fewer students as we're going through this piece. And so what we're trying to do is have a system where all schools the arrows are going in the same direction so that we can all share the resources and the strategies and support all of our students as they move through the grade level. And so now we come to some data that we do have. And so in looking at the data that we have, we were able last year to take the fall 2019 iReady diagnostic in reading and mathematics. This test, as I've shared with you before, does both the subject of mathematics and reading. And our kindergartners do not take this even the first time until January. So their data is not placed in this area yet. But what we did is, how do we compare? We did not take the spring diagnostic due to COVID. Our students were home. And so we decided to look at a fall to fall comparison. And if you're looking fall to fall, one would question, if you're listening to anything in the news or reading in the newspaper, how are our kids doing? This is a huge concern we all have. First and foremost, we want to make sure our students are safe, they feel connected, they feel supported, and then we're getting to our academics. So in looking at these color bands, I'm really excited to look at and see that we can follow a cohort of students. So for example, if I was a first grader last year, or if I'm a first grade teacher last year, last fall, first graders, 81% of them were at the tier 1 level. So what that means is that we were looking at students who may need some support, but it's at the classroom level support. And so this year, when they took the iReady diagnostic as a second grader, as a second grade cohort, we dipped down to 79%. When you think about everything we've been through, not a bad jump. And so we're able to look at these groups to see how did students do from one fall to the next fall with the lack of traditional instruction in front of them. And so if we're looking at our color bands, we're pretty much on, in some places we're above. So a great shout out to reading. If I look at first grade or second grade readers going into third grade, made a 6.6% jump. Grade 3 started at 75% in the fall, and this fall as fourth graders, they're up at 83%. And so we've seen some large jumps in the reading, which is typical across the United States. We're seeing that the reading has stayed steady or grown up a little, and the math is the one that is coming down a little bit. So I wanted to also share with you, fourth grade is the area where, when we look at, I thought, oh my goodness, we started at 77%, and now the kids are at 60%. Why is that? So because of the way that we can assess the data and take a look at it, we look at our reports and we look at all of the strands in mathematics. And the strand that stuck out with the lowest percentile at 56% only, our kids achieved tier 1. Those kiddos, if I go back and look at our scope and sequence, did not have the geometry strand instructed to them face-to-face in a traditional way. And so it makes sense that we would see a dip in that instructional area. So what do we do about that dip? So now we go in and we are able to see, and we're very fortunate that Ready Mathematics that we're using has revamped their scope and sequence so that we're able to do some more geometry up front with our fifth graders. And so we can get them those skills that they traditionally would have had in the springtime that we mix. So I share that with you because even though the kids are down, this team will be working together to now say, okay, what is it we need to do and how do we help these kids achieve where the lessons they missed or the achievement level that we want to see at. And so a couple of things to note is the majority of our students did continue their learning from fall to fall comparison data. The cohort data in reading has less than a drop in math, and a huge thank you to teachers and to parents. When we had to do this spring, it was really difficult. I think everyone will admit that it was not the same, but our teachers persevered, our parents persevered, and the sky isn't falling down on our data. Yes, we have some gaps that we need to fill in, but our kids are still learning, and I think that's a really great sign that we're seeing. So some next steps with the iReady data is our administrative team will be working together to understand the student needs and to support staff. And so that means where are we right now? What is it students need? I think you've heard me speak before that the iReady component has pathways. They also have a new report that they've put in place called the the prerequisite skills. So we're able to actually take a look at those, and we're able to assign students individual pathways. The system will also assign them to those prerequisite skills that they are weak on. And so students can work on their days that they're at home, and they can work through the program using videos and using strategies, and it can maybe fill in some of those pieces. And it also hands out to you, if I am a support person at the primary school, for example, as a teacher, I can say, these 3 students are lacking the skill, and here are the lessons. Can you fill them in, and can you redo these with the students? And so it provides us with a huge amount of tools. And so when we know where the kids need some support, we're able to provide the support. And the support is written into the program. It isn't I need to think of something to do to fill this gap back in. And so it's getting all of us used to using the tools that we've been giving through the iReady data, looking at as a classroom teacher, where do my kids fall? Where the kids need support? It's working together as a grade level or a PLC group to identify where kids are. And how do we change our instruction to meet what is in front of us with kids? What are the best strategies to do when they're in person versus when they're not here, when they're at home? What could I assign for them to do independently that will help move that needle a little bit further? And then, of course, we will be checking and adjusting with our administrative team, and we're all looking at the data the same way, which was determined on those pieces. Excuse me. And so in closing, I will love and always would take any questions. And then tonight, I've also, we've asked that our building administrators, they are all on the call with us tonight. And we're talking about this at all of our leadership meetings. And some thoughts that we may want to talk about, or you're welcome as a board to ask, are how do we look at student achievement and data during this time? What are they seeing as building leaders due to COVID-19? And then how do we continue to support students, family, and staff? And so all of them have been extremely thoughtful in not only running a building during this hybrid time and working with staff and making sure the building is going, but how are they supporting their teachers and their achievement levels? And it's different from building to building because of the grade levels. And I think it's really important. And it's also, I think it will be really incredibly, I think it's really thoughtful for them to share what's going on at the building and the really great things. I get to hear it, and not always does the school board or the public get to hear what's going on in the buildings. And I will open it up to questions. And then Chris, I'll ask you if you want to moderate, or Janie to talk about how we would like to have this discussion with all of us around the achievement.
Christine, can we go back to regular view?
Yes, I was
Perfect.
just doing that. Thanks.
First, let's go to questions. Scott had a question.
Thank you, Christine. I am curious with the reduced time that students are in classrooms. Are teachers having a harder time identifying any needs of any intervention that would be coming up, and looking for anybody to answer?
Beth, you want to go?
Danielle?
Beth and I usually say the same thing, but you jump in, Beth. No, I was just going to say what's really been interesting is there have been a lot of silver linings, unexpected benefits of having this model in place. So one of them has definitely been the reduced class size, significant in terms of instruction. And I've heard many teachers have said, first of all, they're not feeling as behind as they thought they would feel, behind in terms of getting through the curriculum and worrying about we only have 2 days. And they can tell in the moment much easier who's getting it, who's not, and really get a sense of that every day. So there's definitely some silver linings there. Beth, if you want to jump in.
Well, kids really can't hide. They all have to respond when there's only 6. So they all have to do some participating and answering, and there's less behaviors. So it allows for more of that wait time for kids to come up with their answers, and that allows teachers also to scaffold their questioning that I'm seeing in the classrooms. And I think your question, Scott, was more about on the off days when they're not in school, and if we're seeing how to support students. For the most part, we have parents that are invested in and are capable and able to help their child on those days. But as always, we always have some students that are not being supported. So I think this goes across to all our buildings. We really try to keep in touch with our teachers, and if there's really a concern, really problem solving and being creative. So for my building, I do have a building sub that we have due to the COVID money. And so when she is not subbing, she is also working with students. And we have a couple of students, it's just working on the academics that they're not doing on their off days, so that they're not falling as far behind.
Excellent, thank you.
Marge?
Yes, Christine, this is probably more for you. I'm curious because when you gave the numbers before from fall of last year to fall of this year, and a lot of the testing has not been done. So how much should we be looking at those percents? Are they really making that much of a drop from last year to this year if we haven't been doing the same testing? I guess the thing is, how concerned should we be about that?
So the iReady data is completely clean, Marge. It is apples to apples. So the iReady diagnostic, when students log in, adjusts to their levels. And so this is the same diagnostic they took in the fall, the same timepieces, the same setup. There was no change. Our kids that are remote were able to remote right in at home and do the same diagnostic. And so where they're falling is pretty much a really good true picture. And I talked to my cohort friend in Scarborough who also uses iReady, and she was saying the same thing. Unfortunately, and I think I spoke to Chris and Christine about this week, if you listen to the news, it sounds like, God, the sky is falling and our kids are not learning anything. And yet when I look at this data, they're doing pretty well for, what we went through in the spring. Yes, we have more work to do. Yes, we're on it, but at least we have this data point from the fall to fall. And now we will continue to monitor the data when we look at and adjust when we need to. I think it's encouraging. I think it's kudos to our staff and to our parents and to our kids for being resilient. It's really hard, and I'm sure Scott is going to feel the same way. if you've got an off day and your middle schooler just doesn't want to do their work, that's the hardest part we're finding. Or how can we get the kids to do what they need to do on the off days when they're not in front of us, so that they can be caught up, and being really creative about using the pathways that they can go on and they can work and catch up on those skills. And so I think we've got a great tool to use. The tool will never replace the relationships we have with kids to help motivate them. But I know that all of our leaders here tonight are working with staff, and we're all trying to, again, kids are safe, they feel connected, and we're going to do some learning, and we're going to keep monitoring that learning to where we are.
And well, the other half of it is I was really surprised that the reductions weren't more than they were, only because how we finished off last year, which was everybody kept thinking this is going to end and everybody's going to go back, you know what I mean? So that the kids really had half a year of school, of what they would consider to be real school. And this year it's been acclimating to something totally different, a different way of learning. So the other question I had is, how are we comparing, and do we, with those numbers, with our cohorts, the surrounding communities we usually compare ourselves to?
So there are 2 other districts that use the iReady like we do. One is Scarborough, which I spoke to Monique today, and she's making her graph because she's doing this report to her school board tomorrow night, and she's seeing the same pieces. Okay. She's seeing the reading has popped up and the math is a little bit down, but pleasantly surprised. And again, teachers giving them this huge shout out that what you're doing probably doesn't feel comfortable, but the kids are still learning. We're doing okay. We're holding it, we're holding steady, and we're moving up a little. And I think, despite everything that we've been through and the lack of face-to-face traditional instruction, we're doing okay. And of course, we're going to monitor it. Like Chris says, this report really is to capture what's going on in time. And we'll, again, look at our diagnostic in winter and look at our diagnostic in spring. And then you have a really true picture of our kids have been through a whole year of hybrid. How did they end up in the spring from the fall? So we have some exciting pieces that we can look at as we move forward with this data.
That's great. Thank you. And I want to thank you all for all the work you're doing. I know this is not easy, and the kids are flourishing. A little bit struggling, I'm sure, but thank you all.
Kate?
Thank you. This is really specific to Ryan, but I think I've been hearing that it impacts all the buildings, and that is student engagement. And specific to the high school, I've heard some rumblings from other districts that because of the lack of student engagement, where the phrase ghosting, they're looking at a substantial number of students that are going to have to do a 5th year. And I'm wondering if you are seeing that trend, or if you could speak to that.
So we've got some kids that we're trying to find, get a little bit more engaged, but I'm not looking at large numbers of kids that are going to be in that 5th year situation, in part because of the Eagle Block, where a lot of schools don't have that type of, weren't able to create that type of remediation. So I think there was in my conversations with principals throughout Cumberland County, the asynchronistic model didn't work great for a lot of high school kids. And the fact that for our remote group is the one who struggles the most, I think, with attendance. And we're requiring them to meet 4 days a week. So we've got a better picture as to where they are, what they're doing. So I'm not as concerned about that as I know that some of our counterparts around us are, because we're recovering 5-6 credits from last year every day, and we're getting kids closer. We also, the board supports us. I was talking to Chris the other day. We've got positions that other people don't have. So through the school completion specialist in JMG, she worked with kids all through the summer. So probably 40 credits, 50 credits worth of remediation on some kids who really struggled. They came into the year on a positive swing. So we've got those different positions and different ways to support kids that other people don't have. I am concerned, like I said earlier, kids that are on quarantine are finding it harder, I think, to stay engaged. And I think they're engaged enough so that they're not going to fail or lose credits, but they're not going to show the type of student they really are, is my fear. So we're working on ways to make sure that they continue to be engaged when they can't be in the building physically. The teachers are putting so much work into those 2 in-person days and making them very impactful that when students aren't with us, it hurts. And we're trying to figure out what we can do to address that.
Thank you. If I might, Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
Shifting gears just a tad. This is Christine, but maybe also you, Ryan. Christine, you know I want to set my hair on fire when I hear that we're not going to do the MEA, because this flip-flop back and forth, I've been talking about for years, and how we have no consistent testing mechanism. And clarify for me now, when it says they're not using who for the MEA platform, does that mean that we will not be using MEA?
That is correct. We will not be using MEA this spring, Kate. And you were the first person I thought of when that news bulletin came through.
I'm telling you, this makes me want to set my hair on fire because, and I know you all feel the same way, there is just absolutely no consistency. And thank heavens we have iReady and something, because when it comes down to student achievement, and I know we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket with the MEAs for all the reasons we know, but I'm really PO'd about it, quite frankly. The other thing is, if maybe either you or Ryan can address the fact that they're not going to do the SAT any longer and the impact that has on our students, and why?
I'll start with the why, and then Ryan, if you want to go impact. The Commissioner of Education, and working with schools in the state of Maine, colleges and universities, none of the schools are now requiring the SAT for entrance, with the exception of, I think, the nursing program and engineering program at UMO. And I know our commissioner has not been a long-term proponent of the SAT. And so I think there's looking at opportunity at the state level to go to a different platform. So depending upon who the vendor ends up being for the elementary, intermediary, middle school, there is a possibility that may also trickle into then, instead of being a 3rd year high school test, to being either a 9th grade or a 10th grade. And one of the possibilities out there is the NWEA as an assessment being used by the state for districts as the assessment of choice for federal purposes and federal reporting. So that has not been finalized, but I know that the state has publicly said that they're not going to continue their contract with Measured Progress. So there's a good chance that instead of Ryan testing his 3rd year students as juniors, that he'll be testing the 9th graders or the 10th graders for federal accountability. So Ryan, you can talk about what the ultimate impact is going to be for kids that are looking at schools outside of Maine.
So there are 2 impacts really I look at. The first one is kids don't have the free option to take the SAT. We're going to look, if and when this happens, we'll look through Melmac to see what we can offer for kids to try to help with the cost. We continue to be an SAT test site. The issue there is that if you give an SAT on the weekend as a test site, you have to take people from all over. So we were one of the last schools to cancel Saturday SAT testing because we had people coming from as far as New York to take it because all the test sites were closed. So it gets a little tricky. We'll still be able to offer the SAT, but it will be at a cost to families unless we can figure out a way to help with Melmac. The second impact is buy-in from high school students. The SAT had a natural buy-in. There was a motivation to do their best on the exam because not only did it paint a picture of what we're doing, but it was also useful to them. I don't know how many years ago, 2014, we didn't do the SAT and we had a different measure for juniors. The participation across the state was really, really low. We had schools, I was at South Portland at the time, Cape Elizabeth had less than 40% of their kids take it. Their parents supported the kids in not taking it. This test doesn't mean anything to us. Why would we give up a day's worth of instruction for a test? So that's a little bit concerning to me. The SAT was, there was a self-motivation there. And also I'm a data guy. So Kate's point is right on that we don't have that comparative data we made some significant changes to our math program by looking at different sets of data over time, and not having that consistent trend data to use is troubling for sure.
So am I clear that the SAT is not important for colleges, or it is important?
It's important for some colleges. It's less important in Maine than it has been in the past, but it is important for some. It's not offering it, I think, is limiting to our students in some areas. Being a data guy, I've never been a big proponent of the SAT as the 11th grade measure. It's more an aptitude test than anything else, but it does give you a measure we could use it as a measure over time. And I think it's a motivator for our students to take a high stakes test and really work hard, prepare for it, and see that their hard work paid off. Where they don't get the same payoff for doing great work on, let's say, an NWEA.
Yes.
A final question, and this is perhaps for Beth, regarding our little people in pre-K, and I'm assuming as far as student achievement, I guess my question is, these are little fourth graders or 4-year-olds who are going to be going into kindergarten. And is there going to be any comparative data between our JUMP program, am I calling that right? The summer program. Are we going to see measurable Jumpstart, thank you. Big gains. You're going to be, I know you are, but you're going to be measuring the impact of having pre-K, because as we all know, we only have 2 classrooms, and this is important if we want to move forward with more kiddos.
Yeah, I would, Christine usually houses all that data because, when you want to see that the benefits of pre-K and what that looks like. And so we'll be tracking our students as they go through and how their scores are in comparison to other students. So next year when they're in kindergarten, they participate in the universal screener iReady, then we'll be able to see where they are in comparison to their peers in their classroom. And that'll be, the Raymond and Wyndham kindergarten kids, because our little Wyndham pre-K students will be at WPS. So Kyle will be looking at that data as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for, oh, sorry. Did you want to speak, Danielle?
I'm not trying to make Kate's hair further fire. I want to note something that I think is a real strength that we're never going to see in our data because we've lost the data trail. But I know 100% in my heart that our writing scores would have shown drastic increases over these last couple of years. And we're not going to be able to capture that because 5th grade was the testing year, and I think it was 8th grade as well. And I know just from seeing it every day that our kids are writing much, not more, but just quality and more. And we're not going to be able to show you that, but I just want to tell you it's true.
Well, thank you.
With NWEA and iReady, and they don't usually have a component of writing.
I had a question, and that is, I know that when we would take a test or take some type of test in the primary level, we would do an item analysis of the test to find out which, word problems were always the ones that it was universal. Can we do a strand analysis of the iReady scores and have that kind of information? And you were talking about geometry was low, but if we could, I'd be interested in that kind of meta analysis.
Yes, I'd love to share that with you because this whole team is going to work together and that's what we're going to dig down into. So we can even go down, Janie, to the absolute granular concept or lesson that our students need some work and assistance on, and which ones are really strong. So
that's a particular interest of mine, as you would know. But I think for our board, it would be an interest because it's tells where we're lacking and where we need to pump up the volume. So I'd be interested in that. The other thing that strikes me, and Kate touched on it, and we have all been touching on it, but is there a way that we can do create a test that is specific to our school district that we do? And I'm talking about the iReady. If we just keep doing iReady for 10 years, or keep doing doing the writing scores where we used to do analysis of writing, and keep doing that for 10 years, at least we would have the knowledge about what's happening in our district if we, kept it.
And Jenny,
I agree with you. Go ahead, Chris.
It's a great point, and it's actually a reason why for multiple years we did the NWA, because we went from the MEA to the kneecap to the MEA again, and then we went to Smarter Balance, and at least we had that constant data strand. When iReady was introduced, it was the decision, I remember at the time I was a principal, was let's do something that's related to the programming and work that we're doing to do that. So that would be my hope as well, to have that consistent piece of data, because in order to be able those growth lines and trend lines that you can see year after year, strengths and weaknesses within the district, we need to have it. So you're spot on, Jenny, with that.
Well, I hope it's continued. Pete has his hand raised.
All right, thank you. And getting back to the iReady results, it's certainly encouraging seeing the results on the reading side. As far as the math side goes, and board leadership, maybe this will be better served as a topic for a future agenda, but we've invested a lot of time and resources into choosing the math program a few years back. We had the math committee and spent countless days and hours, and I don't even know how long coming up with this. And I'd be curious to hear how that's going. Christine, maybe you can just speak to it briefly, but in terms of how well the program's being received, how well it's being implemented, some of the challenges that we're seeing. And yeah, I'd like to know what the staff thinks of it.
So for staff, I'll have the principals talk about that piece, but from a district level, for the first time, Pete, we all have the same scope and sequence at every grade level. That was something that was desperately needed a few years ago when we did our math audit. As you remember, we had people all over the place using different materials, and now we at least are all on, here's the set criteria, here's the set scope and sequence. It's giving some consistency. So now we have grade levels can work together, PLCs can work together, and they're in the same strand at the same time, relatively speaking, and working on a common piece together. It's huge, it's solidifying, it provides us with an opportunity to provide professional development that everyone engages in because they're all in the same piece in the same series. Unfortunately, due to COVID, our math coach, our brilliant new math coach has jumped in, and she's teaching remote second and third graders right now because that was our need. And so we don't have coaching on the ground that we've had in the past, because our first line is to make sure all of our learners have instruction. And so from my point and from what I'm hearing from staff is they like it consistently. It's predictable. They have the materials that they need. It goes back to using manipulatives and reusing them to build that conceptual understanding. And they've had to modify some of the components. So when we look, I think a biggest piece, and then I'll turn it over to principals, if we look at a really strong instructional model, if I'm a teacher and I'm doing instruction, there are certain components I need to hit. You can't just talk at kids the whole time. And this program literally lends itself to all of those pieces. Like teachers don't have to think. If they're following all the lesson format, they're hitting an opportunity for kids to share, their think, pair, share. They're able to comprehend. They're able to work with manipulatives. They're able to work in small group, large groups. And so it lends itself to a really strong instructional model for students that provides us with huge evidence-based gains when done correctly. And so I think that's a big component when I look at a district-wide from my position, that has been a huge change that was from the past. We're all on the same page. And so I'll let the principals chime in because of course, every grade level and every grade span may have their different nuances about it. But from my perspective, when I'm talking about math or I'm working with teachers around mathematics, it's all the same because we're all on the same page. So, Randy?
So Pete, I've been an administrator in the district since the district was created. And so I've been through several different programs being implemented. And this one has been done by far the best of any, including a reading program that didn't get too far. And some other initiatives that were done. They were well thought out, but implemented piecemeal. And implementation was going great last year. I mean, the coaching is a critical piece of that, and having the coaches available when the teachers need them, when they get stuck, when they get frustrated, when they're trying to figure out the program. The training was good. The staff buy-in was very strong. They were committed. We were thoughtful about the program that we chose. I mean, I think if it hadn't been for COVID, things would have been a lot different because we were really getting some comfort with the program, and teachers were starting to settle into it and understand the techniques that were necessary. And now they've had to scramble a little bit, but I think it's gone very well. And I think over time it's going to pay off. It's just going to take probably an extra year of what we would have wanted in the K-8.
Yeah. I just also want to add that the company has been providing training. Christine will set up Zoom meetings where they address our questions that we have. And so Christine has representatives for each building to attend those meetings. And then we present it to our staff. And the last one that I was able to attend really had to do, because right now with being in COVID, it's trying to fit the curriculum, the program in what would normally be 5 days. So they walked us through how to do this program and what are the essential pieces that you need to address, and look at how to manage and plan your days, because there's a component in there that has like one area that might say that you can work on the lessons for 2 to 6 days. So you know that you don't have to do 6 days, but you can do 2, but what are the priorities that you do have to do every time you're doing the new lessons with the students? So I think that's really helped teachers to look at it differently and plan accordingly, and understanding. They also walked us through the iReady data and looking at, when you look at students, what are the prerequisites, skills that they're missing, and which students you really should find some group time or individual time to work with them, and how to build that in. So I think that's, I think the company has done a great job of supporting, and Christine listens to what we need and then poof, organizes something for us and we get it done. But I think it's been a great program. I know with any program, usually you start out and teachers will grumble and mumble because it's all new. And as Randy said, right before COVID, I think they really hit their stride and they were really doing a great job with the program, and then had to shuffle and figure it out. And now they're still trying to have to figure it out based on the number of days students are in school. But I think that extra training was valuable in making sure they're also addressing the needs of the kids and where those prerequisites are lacking for some of the kids.
Would anyone else like to opine? Ryan?
At the high school, we're using the college preparatory math. I think students and teachers are becoming much more comfortable with the philosophy of having conversations about math. And we know that that's where you get the deeper level of understanding. Definitely, the PD has been hurt a little bit by COVID, but the staff are working really hard to support each other and to figure out the best way to deliver this curriculum in a schedule that it's not designed to follow that format. And CPM's just now starting to provide some virtual support. So we're feeling pretty good. We're a little down, as some of the other administrators have shared, that I felt like we were really going to hit our stride this year, and that's been stunted a bit, but we're feeling good about the program and the deeper level of learning that kids are getting.
Kate?
Thank you. My final question is for Craig, and I'm wondering if you can just briefly highlight your students and their achievement and the challenges for alternative students.
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Craig Hames. I'm still fairly new. I'm in my second year as the director at the Katahdin program. And COVID has represented all kinds of challenges for our demographic, like everybody else. But we've also had some opportunities. I do think I heard Ryan and others talk about the smaller class size and the opportunity to go deeper because there's more one-on-one attention. So that's been really important for our students. And I think the community is essential for our kids who come from homes often that need extra communal kind of community connections. And so having that time to connect with smaller groups of students has been super helpful. Their completion rate of academics has been better simply because they've had more one-on-one support. Just like we've been hearing across the district, the remote days and the asynchronous learning has been a real challenge. We have a new Ed Tech 3 who's on staff this year for the first time, and she's been able to find time during the day to Zoom in with students and do Google Meets to support students during their off days to make sure that they get completion during their asynchronous off days. So that's been super helpful. So all things being equal, I think our students are making progress. It would be more helpful if we could see them every day, for sure, just like all the other schools. But the smaller class size has provided opportunities. Another thing that's been really great is our Fridays. We've used them as flex days throughout. And so there's multiple opportunities to meet a diverse array of needs, from social emotional needs to counseling to academic support, remediation, credit recovery, experiential programming. So we've had some students get out on adventures and experience kind of the thrill of doing things in the outdoors with staff. So we've had all kinds of opportunities to reach kids in creative ways and keep them engaged in school through flex days on Fridays. So that's been a huge plus. Another plus is that we have a new partnership with the Wyndham Food Pantry. And so every week we have a food distribution for students to make sure that food insecure families have the food that they need. So we provide that service every week. And that's been incredibly helpful. And I think that's really helped with attendance, engagement, the ability to focus on learning. Just like the other schools, we've heard a lot fewer disciplinary issues this year, a lot fewer, like 90% fewer. And I think that's attributable to a number of things, but the smaller density of students and the increased support from staff has been helpful. So I think it's been, there's been some significant challenges, but also some really isolated and generalized successes as well that we can celebrate. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to elaborate more.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Anyone have anything to add or would like to? Any school board members have questions? Okay. Any administrators have a burning desire to speak?
Sure.
Drew, I was looking right at you when I said that.
I could see your eyes staring at me. So no, always happy to talk about our students and our staff. And I just want to give an update in general that we do think things are going really well at Wyndham Middle School. I think like all the schools, our eyes were and our focus was on opening school in a safe way, and our staff and students getting used to that. And all I can say is the students have done a wonderful job. The parents have been very supportive, and the staff have been great in supporting that as well. I do think I'm very pleased when I walk around, and what I see in general is happy students, and that means a lot to me. And I think in general, my colleagues also feel like students are happy to be in school and feel fortunate to be in school. And then all the benefits that people have talked about in terms of class sizes are certainly helpful. At the same time, some of the concerns that people brought up about the amount of instruction and trying to just figure out how to overcome that. I think all of our staff are in the phase of still learning. It's still new. Each day there are different challenges and different demands. And I think we're still in that phase of trying to check and adjust and adapt to really a climate that's changing daily. Pete, I just wanted to speak to the math a bit. I agree with what everybody said. I do think some of the comments that I have from some of my staff is that the curriculum can be a little dry. And so with anything that's canned, that's not always the most, well received by staff. And so I think it's this blend of finding the guardrails and establishing the frameworks for staff, but then also making sure that we rely on them as practitioners and as teachers that really know the kids well and how to motivate and engage. And that's a bit of a delicate balance. And I think as an administrative team, we have these conversations very often about the benefits of a canned curriculum, but also some of the downsides when it comes to engagement with kids. And at the middle level, that's really critical. And then lastly, I'll say, like everybody, the asynchronous learning is challenging for kids, all kids. And I would say middle school kids to be able to get up and most of whom are trying to make their own schedule, because these are kids like my own son who's at home by himself, and expecting them to get on to Google Classroom and being able to complete assignments. A lot of it is these students do not have the executive functioning skills to do that consistently. And then a lot of it is these are middle school kids who are drawn into technology more so than the assignments that are provided on Google Classroom. So that's just the overall reality of it. I think teachers were hoping they could cram 2 days of instruction in one, especially with math, and it just doesn't work out that way. Kids still need a lot of support, and the concepts are still difficult to deliver in an effective way just through an assignment on Google Classroom, if that makes any sense. So that's just my quick thing. Things are going really well. I do think, at least at Wyndham Middle School, especially this week, we've hit sort of a new phase in terms of the amount of kids that are out for various reasons. And some of these are quarantining because of things that have happened in their own lives. Some of them are quarantines that have been required by the school department. And I think teachers they're more on edge than I've ever seen. I'm more on edge just because of what we see in the communities and then also within the schools. So I think you also have to weigh that. Teaching is hard enough as it is before COVID, and now you add the stress and anxiety of these cases popping up and how that impacts particular families, and it impacts kids, it impacts families, it impacts teachers. And so that's the other thing to just keep in mind. And I know you're all aware of that, but it's there for sure. So I'm done.
Kyle?
I'll take a quick minute to share a little update. I really believe everyone who spoke already has given you a really strong and clear picture of what's happening in our schools. I do want to take a moment to thank the the Wyndham High School cheerleaders. It was really cool when they came up with the idea of videotaping themselves reading books so that they could share that with our primary kiddos. So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged them. That was really cool. I'm actually gonna just talk quickly like about what's happening at primary through the lens of our core values. One of our core values is teamwork, and I would say the best way to describe it is right now all hands on deck. We've got people taking on roles that maybe they normally wouldn't take on, but we've got to be in this all together. And I know we don't have visitor right now, but if you saw some of the things that people were doing to support kids, keeping them safe, you'd be really proud of that. And people just being really flexible. And at the same time, that's kind of having that growth mindset that you might put yourself in a new, have to do things in a new way. People talked about the math program. So we're asking teachers to teach a little bit differently. So it's stretching their growth. And just like we expect in our learners to have a growth mindset, so do our teachers right now have that growth mindset. And there's a high level of acceptance of what's going on, and then putting our best foot forward with this pandemic. People's got their chins up. They're accepting that things can't be the way we'd expect them to be. We're being really creative about how people are instructing while still following the CDC guidelines. It's really cool to see the neat ways that teachers have come up with. I was watching a teacher the day instruct a guided reading lesson from 6 feet away using a pool noodle, and you wouldn't have, and it looked so strange. And the kids were used to it, so was the teacher was used to it. It's those types of things going on that kind of reflect on what is happening through our core values. It's a good way of looking at a lens to look at what's happening at primary. One part that we do need to get better at, and it's been touched on in different ways from other administrators, is supporting not just the students, but the families on the days when the children are not in front of us. We've got to do a better job. We started to do some, or provide some opportunities for families to get some trainings on some of the online platforms that we have. We've created some videos for them to watch to help support their learners, but we got to do more of that. Look for some more ways to help motivate their learners when they're at home or at daycare or in the car. And one piece that I believe hasn't been talked about yet tonight, but I felt was a real eye opener for me was Mrs. Jordan and I met with a group of our learners this summer, and then again we met with them again in October. We met in person in the summer, and we met using Zoom in October. And what they had to say about school when we were closed, what their hopes and wishes were for the upcoming school year, and then once school had started. And one of the pieces that resonated for both of us was how much they wanted some normalcy with just not just school but life in general. And just a couple examples that they could share was even though the way we're serving food is going fantastic, they want to go back to the cafeteria because they want to see some of their friends. A super small thing that we were able to do was they wanted us to sell Smencils. Like we normally would sell Smencils, those are smelly pencils, and we can do that. So just when we hadn't thought of that, and we hadn't thought of a way to do it in a safe way, but we figured that out. But it's those kind of things that were on their minds, and it's really cool to hear them be able to articulate that. I know I want to keep the school safe. I know I've got to wear a mask, but I don't like it. So.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, hi, thanks. I want to say that initially that we are open. I think people have thought that adult education has been closed, but we are here, and we are seeing quite a few students come to us. Some from the high school, but also from the community, and it's been it's gone well for us. I guess that's the general consensus is that people have found us. Some people have preferred to be here in person. They're not going to be successful being at home. They don't have the technology or the motivation, the self-discipline to do things at home. So they really prefer to be here in person. So we have like our English as a second language or ESOL students. Some come and actually some of those have actually preferred to be at home because they don't have to deal with all the barriers that they have had in the past, whether it be childcare or transportation or work schedules. They can work with our teachers. And I can say my teachers have, the whole idea about teamwork, we have really stepped up and made sure that we are here for our students whenever they need us. Even though we do have office hours and scheduled class times, if a student says, I can only work with you from 3 to 4 on a Wednesday, well, then we make it work from 3 to 4 on a Wednesday. So I think that's been really, really positive. We do a hybrid model, flexible schedules, daytime and evening for both classes and for testing. We talked about achievement. We are required to test our students with what's called the CASAS, which is a Comprehensive Adult Student Assessment System form. And so all of our students in the academic program have to be pre-tested with that form. It's about a 2-hour test. Doesn't always go over very well. And then they have to be post-tested for us to get credit for serving them. So that has been a challenge because our students can be, kind of a transient population. And they tend to stop out. We call it not dropping out, but stopping out when life gets difficult. And we know that life has been very difficult for the last 6 to 8 months. So they always know our door is open, but unfortunately, we have to test like crazy to get credit that we've served them, to show an educational gain. So then we can get, again, and put that in our national reporting system, required reporting system, to make sure we get credit. So we try to tell the students that that's just something, it's a necessary evil that we have to do. So when you first come in, and then at some point before after 12 hours of instruction, and sometimes it's usually best to be done between 45 and 70 hours of instruction, we need to test him to show a gain. So I guess that has been a challenge for us. There is an electronic version of the CASAS that has been unveiled recently. It's not easy to navigate at all for both us on the the education side, but also for the students. So we're working through that. I just want to say we're really appreciative of the support we've been given, by the central office and high school and Bill Hansen and his staff. The students and teachers love the plexiglass dividers we have in our classrooms. All the PPE we got, the extra Zoom accounts. We're able to get some computers that we can lend out to students, and that has made a difference for students to stay engaged with our program. I think things are going well. And we're putting together our classes for next semester, and the majority of our classes are, kind of a hybrid model. We make sure that people know that they can come here in person if they want to and feel safe. And I think we have a great facility here that we can keep safe. But if they prefer to be online, then we are ready to go for them as well. So in our enrichment programming, which is different, that's primarily online, and we've actually been running some wonderful classes that way. And the nice thing about that is we can cooperate and coordinate with programs from all over the state, so we can offer their classes, online in our catalog and on our website, and vice versa. And we're getting students taking classes from not only just Maine, but and out of state as well, signing up for our enrichment classes. So that's nice, and we like to want to support the community in their own mental health and wellness, knowing that sometimes just taking a class with us might just be something that it's the one thing they did for themselves that day or that week, and it's it helps them to get through these troubled times. So thanks for this opportunity. I'm willing to answer any questions either now or later. But again, thanks for your support. Appreciate it.
We always thank the teachers, and rightly so. They have done an amazing, incredible job. But I know we want you all to know that we appreciate what difficult jobs that you have, and how you have come through to support the kids and the teachers in in very, very, very real ways. So thank you all. I'm looking at every single one of you in the eyes. I kind of like that I can do that. And to tell you that face to face, you're amazing. So thanks.
I guess I'll just like to say that I can imagine being a school board member isn't the easiest task either. And without you guys supporting us, it wouldn't work so well. So thank you for being school board members, because that it means a lot.
You know.
Okay, Christine, as always, thanks for the huge amount of work. It's as you said, stellar, and that's what we've come to expect. So we really appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. And I hope Kate Levat, I hope we didn't scare you off today by practicing our presentation tomorrow for Educate Maine. We were a little punchy by that afternoon, and we hope that you join our session tomorrow.
It will be terrific.
I'll be there for sure.
Okay, thanks again. We'll move on to the secretary's reports. I didn't assign anybody, so I'd be glad to take anybody who'd like to do the motions. Just jump in, raise your hand.
I move to approve the minutes of November 4th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Pete. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, bye.
March Scavone,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Janie Cummings,
Aye.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Jenny Butler.
Yes.
Jenny, would you read the second? Oh, the motion's carried. Jenny?
Yes. I move to approve the minutes of the November 18th, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Christina. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
March Scavone,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney.
Yes.
Kate Levier, would you do the third, please?
Oh, I would. I move to approve the minutes of the November 23rd, 2020 meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Kate Levier, seconded by Marge. Any public comment? Any board discussion? All those in favor?
March Scavone,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Aye.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Pete Hensler,
Aye.
Kate Levier, Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we'll move to committee reports. Do any committees have a report? Pete?
Finance met on November 10th, and I don't think that I've had a chance to report out on that yet. So it was a while ago, but I'll just give you a brief rundown. We discussed revenues and expenditures year to date. That was as of through October. And at that point, we had 64% remaining for the expenditure balance and 66% remaining on the revenue side. So we're pacing right along where we should be. We spent the majority of the meeting talking about the second rounds of corona relief funding and how that was going to be spent. Chris and Christine Bertnay went over the application process, and I think there was 17 different projects that we applied for that were approved, and ended up totaling about $2.5 million. So we went through each one of the projects, just talking about what was involved in them. The biggest one was technology and equipment and supplies to support the learning, both in person and remotely. A large portion of that was new machines and new cases. Some of the other large items, there was $615,000 for outdoor classrooms, pavilions, and trails. And again, just to reinforce, these are all things that are helping us now as we cope with COVID, but they're also strategic investments that are going to benefit the districts even beyond the pandemic. $201,000 for transportation, including a new bus, a couple of new vans, as well as a refrigerated truck to help support the meals that we're carting around to the different areas of the district. So those are some of the bigger ones that were involved. And just, we're very fortunate as a district to be receiving these funds, and a big thank you to Christine and Chris and Bill Hansen and everybody that's involved in putting these applications together to secure these funds for us. And then the last part of the meeting, we did talk about the need to review the cost sharing formula, and Chris alluded to that in our last board meeting, that he proposed that the finance committee take the lead on that, which we agreed to do. So that was basically the gist of the meeting.
Thanks, Pete. Anybody else have anything to say or have any committee report to make?
I want to say a quick follow-up to that refrigerated truck, because I think it's coming in this week. The day before we left for Thanksgiving break, I think we were at 3,400 meals that were served on that day to cover students and families through the extended break. So the volume of meals that are coming through food service to support not only our remote, but also our in-person students is absolutely, it's amazing what is being served right now. So we will definitely have some not only short-term use, but long-term use of what's been purchased through that. But it just made me think of that, Pete, that Jeannie had mentioned. I think they were at 3,300 or 3,400 meals on that one day.
All right. Now time for the superintendent's report.
Great. Just, I want to share a few things with you tonight. And I wish Craig was here, because two of Craig's teachers, Christine Fredette and Ashley Tempesta, just recently applied for the Maine Environmental Educators Outdoor Learning Grant and received $400, which will go to PD for them. And as all of you know, Katahdin has a huge outdoor learning component, and so we're excited about the PD that will be offered and how that's going to impact our kids at Katahdin with this additional grant. So I know Christine and Ashley, anytime you put in a grant and you get it, it's super excited, but as was Craig, because it's that opportunity to add to their PD. Also, I think one of the things, the administrators had a chance to talk. I think one of the things that I'm missing as a superintendent is that, first of all, I didn't get a chance to go to any athletic events this fall, which I enjoy afternoons and also Friday nights going and watching the kids. And because of not having spectators, I respected that as well. So I didn't get a chance to see an event. I didn't get a chance to see the play because the play had to be postponed because of COVID. But I do this Saturday night, as well as all of you and anyone who else is watching, the American Family Holiday, which this year will be the Maine Family Holiday in celebration of Maine's bicentennial, will be airing December 5th, which is Saturday night at 7:30 on the Chamber Singers YouTube channel that is free to the public. There was a little sneak preview on 207 on Channel 6 last night. There are some outstanding special guests, including some alumni who've gone on to do some amazing things beyond the halls of Wyndham High School. So I just encourage everyone who has some time available Saturday night at 7:30 to tune in to that YouTube channel and to stream it. because I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic night. Also received notification today that Lisa's special education audit, which we go through every few years, is officially done. And the school district completed its process, and I'm just reading right from my letter, with no further actions needed. So the state was pleased, sent commendations for the work of our special education staff and how they're meeting. And so that audit now is in the books. And I know that was a couple-year process working through paperwork. And again, it's something that we go through. I believe it's every 5 years with the Maine Department of Education, but to be able to finish that up without any sort of further action and with commendations. Special thank you to our special education staff and all of our site coordinators and our leadership in that for making that happen. And then I just want to end on tonight, which is, I think you probably have seen, and actually have had a couple of, the volume of letters coming from my office for COVID has definitely increased. So just a couple things that I wanted to share with the public, first of all, tonight, which is that in the 11 cases of COVID that we've dealt with in RSU 14, not a single one can be traced to RSU 14, to RSU 14 activities, programs. All of them can be traced to outside activities or outside outbreaks that have happened beyond our control. And in each one of them been the things that have been brought into our school, which has included now cases at Wyndham High School, Wyndham Middle School, and now most recently, as of yesterday, some at Wyndham Primary School. But again, all due to outside activities. We do not have any signs of transmission, and I think this is actually statewide now happening in schools, so that the safety protocols that schools are using across our state are working. In fact, I would venture to guess that if we could keep our student population, if we could have them here every single day, if we had that capacity and being able to follow safety protocols, that we would be able to keep all of our students safe. In fact, I think schools have proven that they are safe places. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and we know students are out in the community, as well as our faculty are out in the community, and we know that COVID is all around us at this point. We've seen the recent spike that's gone on. Our governor has been very clear, and as well as some recent research, that closing schools for COVID doesn't make any sense unless you do as a public health means, unless you close down a community. Because if you're not having your schools open, then kids are home, they're out in the community, the transmission continues. So we will do everything that we can to keep our schools open and to keep them safely open. Ryan alluded to something tonight, which is that as we are working through, and I honestly, 2 years ago, if you'd asked me what contact tracing was, I could probably give you a little pat answer. I think I'm becoming an expert with our school nurses as well as our school administrators. It is not the cases that cause issues. It's actually the contact tracing and the quarantining afterwards that causes the greatest disruption. And if you look at schools around us who have had to close for periods of time, it's not due to the cases, it's not due to outbreaks, it's actually due to the fact that they cannot staff their buildings in order to be able to stay open. So we will continue to keep our buildings open as long as we can, but I just want to make sure that everyone out there in the public knows that we may come across a case where a student case may require so many people to quarantine that we need to go to fully remote for a grade level or for a group of kids at some point. I'm hoping that doesn't have to happen, but I know as we're going through this little bit of a surge that is a possibility, and it's just something that we can be prepared for. But I think that's important for the public to know schools are safe places. Transmission is happening outside of the schools, outside in the community, and then it being brought in, and then we're being impacted by it. But I should have said it while the administrators are on. I think I've had more conversations with principals about COVID in the past couple of weeks as we've kind of worked through some problem solving. They are doing some amazing problem solving and staffing and being very creative, knowing the importance of keeping open for families and for students.
Pete, did you have a question?
Chris, the federal CDC has recently come out and said that the length of quarantine time can be decreased anywhere from 7 to 10 days. Has that made its way through Maine CDC down? Are we going to be changing any of our requirements in terms of quarantining?
Pete, that is a great question because I was hesitant to talk about it because I did listen to the news conference today. Maine is currently evaluating the data, and I'm hoping that that changes. So a couple things looking to change. One is standard quarantine time for someone as a close contact would be dropping, you're right, between 7 to 10 days. The other component which was being proposed is that people will be able to test out of quarantine so that they could return as soon as they have a negative test, whereas now it's a straight 14 days from either time of contact or time from positive test, and they can't produce a negative test to come back. Under those new guidelines, there would be the possibility of a negative test to then be able to return to school or work or whatever. So that would be something that would help us as far as those extended quarantine times. Because again, what we're finding is that we're quarantining, and I'll give you an example in my town, which hasn't happened yet, but I think they had one case which resulted in 138 middle school students having to quarantine. That's a huge disruption. I mean, when you have that many kids and then the associated staff that go along with that, if we can possibly test out of that or reduce those quarantine times, it allows us to stay open longer. But I heard the governor talking about it today, as well as Dr. Shaw, that was something they're evaluating, and hopefully they're going to move forward with that. Another thing which I know is probably on the minds of everyone is what's going to be the role of schools and vaccines. We don't know yet. It's actually a question I have for the commissioner tomorrow in my weekly meeting. What's going to be the expectation? Are we going to be expected to be vaccine sites, or is that something that's going to happen outside of schools? Nothing's been published. You can, if you dig deep enough in the state CDC, you can see some veiled things as what the plans are, but nothing has been solid yet. Kate?
Chris, to that point, will it, I guess this is a question for Pender or for somebody. Aside from being a site, is it going to be similarly to the MMR vaccine and all of the other ones, a requirement that students be vaccinated before they can attend our schools? I guess that'll be a question that I would love an answer to.
And it's a question I've asked Kate, and I've told that they've not fully evaluated that. But I think it's a question that we should keep asking because it will have an impact. I also heard the state today only received 12,000 doses. I think they were expecting 36,000. And those would be 12,000 first, because I think it's a 2-dose process. That's only the first dose. And then the second dose would be timed. And so determining where schools fall in that whole category, we'll wait and see, because I mean, ultimately vaccines could impact how we end this school year.
Thank you.
A lot of questions with it.
Yep. Thank you. All right, could I have a motion, please, to go into executive session?
Sure can. I move to go into executive session to discuss what I can't read off my screen, the superintendent's
evaluation
pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405(6)A and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded by Marge. All those in favor?
Marge Cavoni?
Yes.
Jenny Cummings?
Aye.
Scott McLean?
Yay.
Kate Bricks?
Yes.
Christina Small?
Yes.
Pete Hensler?
Aye.
Kate Levier?
Yes.
Jenny Butler?
Yes.
Anna Keeney?
Yes.
Okay, we're in executive session. Bye.